to a very exciting and special episode of E&Ftv's Bridging the Gap with my esteemed colleagues, the panel. Guys, introduce yourselves. Lisa,
Hi
you go
everyone.
first.
Hi everyone. My name is Nikos. As you can tell from the name, I'm from Greece, and I've been working in the hospitality industry for about 5 years now in operations and revenue management.
Lisa.
Okay, so I am Lisa Wyld. I am the head of the Hotel and Hospitality School at Buckinghamshire New University.
Lisa, what else are you?
Oh, yes, and I'm also the co-founder of an organisation called Hospitality and Universities United, which is about bridging together academia, students, and the industry to ensure that make sure that students stay in the industry once they graduate.
And you always forget that, don't you? You could do with a little Jason on your shoulder saying, and what else are you, Lisa? Undersell yourself. Luca.
Yeah, my name is Luca. I'm a commercial leader with 15 years of experience in between commercial and revenue management in several industries, including car rental, hospitality, and the railways.
You've undersold yourself, king of revenue management.
Oh, at least prince.
Okay, so I think everyone knows you anyway in the industry. You're well known and good supporters of Bridging the Gap. You've all appeared on it before. I was keen to do this panel on screen because we did it at RMAPI, Revenue and Pricing International in London, maybe about a month ago, something like that. And it was quite well received. But I thought it deserved a wider audience just to chat through some of the things that we uncovered. So that was the purpose of today. So thank you for meeting with me on screen. And we'll dive straight in with a meaty one. So we've got a few questions set up. You guys are going to give your thoughts and opinions on how to drive things forward. So first question. And it's a meaty one, as I say. Is it the job of universities to produce work-ready graduates? Now, I know he's into this one by asking, Nikos graduated about 5 years ago, I think you said. Nikos, what was your experience of entering revenue management from university? And did you feel work-ready?
Yeah, I think that it really depends on what you mean by saying work ready. It would be unfair to say that I wasn't taught or didn't have the technical skills to have at least a junior position after university. In fact, I was taught revenue management during my master's degree. So in theory, I was ready to calculate RevPAR or build a comp set or define the business mix. But when it comes to working with large data sets or influencing decisions, talking to different stakeholders, these are all things that you kind of learn while you do the job. So I guess the answer is yes and no. And there's a lot of surprises that you get whilst you're actually working. Yeah, it depends. That's the answer.
You're worse than me for sitting on the fence. I've got a reputation. And I should be in diplomatic relations or something like that. Lisa, what are your thoughts on it? Is it your job?
Is it my job? My job and every other academic that's out there. I would like to switch it around, and I think it's also about looking at whether businesses and the industry itself is actually graduate ready, which sounds like a bizarre thing to say. Of course, we look at putting our programs together with what is needed by industry and what we're being told that we have to have with regards to sort of the skills and everything else that are needed. But it's also looking about whether businesses are ready to actually take on graduates when they leave with the university. Yep, we've given them the skills, some of them soft skills, some of them more technical skills and everything else, but it's still not the same as being within a work environment and needing that mentoring, needing that buddying and everything else that is needed. And also it's about being able to work with us while we have the students as well. So from my point of view, it's very much about working with industry, but also working with academia and everything else to be able to ensure that the data sets that are going to be used are able to be accessed by the students. So they've actually seen that sort of thing rather than it being mocked up and everything else. So I think those relationships with industry during studies is really important to be able to, number one, to us to be able to have work-ready graduates that leave us, but also for businesses to be graduate ready, to be able to support them throughout their journey as well, because just because they have a degree or a master's doesn't mean they are completely ready, and they still need that mentoring and everything else. And I think sometimes that bit gets forgotten.
So what do you need? What's lacking? What do you need from the industry to bridge the gap?
I think for me, it's about looking at how we can work together to be able to ensure that what we're delivering in the classroom and therefore what we're doing outside of the classroom as well is relevant to what is going on within the industry. we have access to all different resources and everything else from an academic point of view and that textbook learning, shall we say, but that only takes us so far in the experiences that we can give to our students. It's great to be able to have some of the businesses that I work with within hotels, within restaurants and bars and everything else that literally open their doors up to us and our students to be able to be completely involved in the operations, to be able to observe decision making and to be able to or even give their point of view available to them on those decision making on various different projects and everything else. So that students, when they go along to interview, they've got tangible stuff to be able to talk about, but also they've had those experiences, they know what they're stepping into when they have that first full-time job after graduation.
Luca, give me your thoughts on that.
I think I'm very aligned with Lisa on this one. I feel, unfortunately, a lot of organizations I worked in, there is not that passion from leaders of actually that mentoring bit, that actually looking after the graduates, keep them busy, give them something that can actually add value rather than just putting them there, to do data entry or photocopies or very basic stuff. So I think, industry definitely has a guilt in that. I think there are unfortunately very few leaders that are very, very passionate about people and passionate about developing people, and which is, I think, is sad. From my point of view, what would be great from universities, and talking about my personal experience, I've never really been approached. So I'm a person, I'm very passionate about people, so I'd love people to actually come to me and ask me for help. So I think that should go, probably from my point of view, I guess. Obviously, everyone is very busy, but as in the industry, we are really busy doing our job. So I would expect people from the university actually to reach out to then trying to bridge that gap. And I'm sure there are leaders out there which they would be more than happy to put the time and effort to do that. Probably not many, but I can guarantee you there are.
Luca, is it lack of time on the part of industry? Is it, and we see it
Exactly.
sometimes in recruitment that it like companies come to us and they want a carbon copy of the person that's just left. They want a cookie cutter kind of thing. They don't have the time to kind of almost invest in teaching someone new systems and things. Is that the problem? Is it just lack of time that everyone's so squeezed?
Part of that, yes. And this is why when we're going to touch base on the student placements, yes, I would agree with you. On the graduate, I don't think it's a lack of time. I think it's lack of passion for that. Time you can find it. Everyone is very busy, but you can always, push back and find time. I think a lot of leaders are probably more, I suppose, KPI driven than people driven. So they might not understand that actually if you keep your people happy, if you develop your people stay, the people add value, then ultimately the KPI will follow. So I think it's probably a cultural thing.
Yeah, and I think listening to you two, you're both on the same page really with this, that it's on both sides. I mean, Lisa, you're probably not representative of all universities in the way that I know that you do so much to kind of reach out to industry, and your syllabus is it's designed with that in mind, isn't it? With industry, is that in your experience is that reflected elsewhere in other universities? Luca says that maybe universities are not reaching out as much as a whole, as a collective. Is that correct?
I think it's true in the fact that you've got certain universities that are very much driven by what industry wants and everything else, and being able to have those connections and being able to have the best experiences for the students that are there. But you've also got the flip side of it that it's easy, shall we say, to not involve industry, which I think is a really negative thing. But it's easy from an academic side not to involve industry because of the time that it takes, that networking, that building up of those relationships and everything else, and that sort of thing. And I think there are some institutions that are out there that have had the same model for many, many years, and for them it works. And students are going on and getting employment and everything else. Whether it's within the field that they've studied in is another matter, but they're going on to get employment. And it's easy to keep doing the same thing that you have done without industry being involved, without reaching out to industry. But I also think that from our side, it's very hard to get to speak to the right people in industry as well. You've got to have a considerable black book, shall we say, to be able to have those connections and to be able to involve various different elements of the industry and everything else. And I would say that certain parts of the world of hospitality are more willing than others to be involved within universities and everything else. And even from my own experiences, I've sent emails to a number of different areas, and you get completely ghosted. And that can be frustrating, because from my side, all we're trying to do is build the curriculum and build a program and modules and experience that both the students want to do, but also industry is supportive of, so that they know that the graduates that are going to go out into those job roles have got the skills and knowledge from both a soft skill side and a technical side that are needed to be able to be successful.
Quick plug, we hold a database of people that want to support the university. So if you are watching and you want to appear on a panel discussion like this, or do a guest lecture, or join a careers day or something like that, or support in any way, get in touch with me. I can add you to the database, send you the link, and then we feed out these people to the universities. Nikos, tell me, how important is it that people from revenue management stand in front of the students, do guest lectures, and because in my experience, it adds a lot more credence when I know you guys have said it, Lisa, and also Ariane at UWL and Kate at Oxford Brookes has said, when people from industry come in and stand in front and impart their wisdom to the students, even though you guys are all ex-industry, you're teachers to them. So they sit up in the seats and take notice. What's your experience of that, Nikos?
Well, I'd say it's very important. It creates kind of a vision for the students. I remember when I was a student and people would come in as guest lecturers, I'd kind of understand more about their day-to-day kind of role and who they are, and envision myself in their shoes or something around their shoes. I've actually guest lectured myself in the university that I was studying, University of Surrey, and it was fascinating to see how many students had a lot of questions that probably weren't being covered in the actual lectures, which are probably a bit more formed around the educational part rather than what does being a revenue manager or a business analyst really mean? What do I need? What kind of skills do I need to have? What challenges will I face? So I'd say, yeah, it's actually very important, and that probably bridges the gap a little bit more between industry and education.
100% agree, and I'm sure you guys do as well. Nikos, let's just go back to something you mentioned earlier, which was hard skills can be taught, soft skills kind of come about over the course of a career, with university having some responsibility to establish a baseline. But just talk us through how your soft skills developed throughout university and into your career.
That's actually a question that is really close to me. Initially, in the beginning of my career, I placed more importance on technical skills, and I think many people are guilty of doing that. Rightly so, because you need to be technically ready in the beginning to hold the job. However, as you grow into your career, I think soft skills become more and more important. And I think excellence comes where you kind of find a way to balance both, being technically professional and also very fluent in your soft skills. So initially, as a student, you get faced with different challenges, but they're usually around things like, presenting in front of the classroom, so your presentation skills, accountability, being accountable for your own work, and working in a team, perhaps. But as you become a professional, and probably a professional that kind of wants to grow, I think you get challenged in many different ways. So from your communication skills, your leadership skills, conflict management is a big one, or diplomacy, knowing what to say and who to say it to, and maybe sometimes not to say anything. It can be very important. So I think soft skills is something that you constantly develop from childhood, but it gets more and more developed as you become a professional, I would say.
Luca, you've got some views on this. You employed someone, if memory serves me right, from a shoe shop in a revenue management role.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, because I'm intrigued to know whether someone working in the industry like you, in senior leadership positions, multiple, do you see soft skills as an area that's lacking?
Yeah, absolutely. Super important. Foot Locker, by the way. That's the shoe shop with Foot Locker. They're the annoying ones. They always come to you asking you, if you want to buy something. But I think it's, yeah, on that one, basically, he had the right, he was looking for a job. So whilst he was applying for roles for his first job after graduation, he was doing a part-time role, which I think, it's always super positive and important when actually people keep busy rather than just staying at home and not actually trying to do something. And I like when fresh graduates also in their interviews talk to me about the customer service skill that they could have, developed working at McDonald's or at Zara or whatever, because I think it's super important. So yeah, it's an area that definitely needs development, and there are so many things that actually you could do in everyday life, even some volunteering work or others, which they actually can really help you shape your soft skills, and they're super important, but not only in your job, also in your personal life. Even in your relationship with your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, or with your family or with your friends. It's so important to actually being able to communicate effectively, because a lot of times I think problems come from misunderstanding. So yeah, it's not only a job skill. For me, it's an absolute it's a life skill.
Yeah, and these things you glean from interview, don't you? And often when I'm doing vetting calls for candidates, certain young people will leap out at me as having advanced soft skills. And I said to a client recently, they already had a short list of people to interview, and they said, I just don't know about squeezing this person in. And I said, honestly, out of all the young people I've spoken to in the last, say, 2 years, this person strikes me as a brilliant communicator, and I can see that taking them far. And then they ended up getting a job. From being not even on the shortlist, they ended up getting a job. Because I just said, look, give this guy 15 minutes. And, and that was it. But Lisa, Luca's saying you guys could maybe do more to develop soft skills. What are you doing? What are universities doing to develop these soft skills? Sell it to us.
I think there is a definite place, and I think a lot of it is around the development of them throughout their studies and everything else, and how they work in teams. And group work is a key element of what we do within the world of education, particularly around things around the world of hospitality, tourism, events, and all of those sort of services. But that helps them to be able to look at those leadership skills and develop those, how to work with conflict, and perhaps the few arguments, shall we say, that come in along the way, where sort of group work and things like that are concerned as well. For me, it's also about having those integral placements and internships when they're actually out in industry, to be able to have that hands-on learning, but to be able to work in different environments, to be able to develop those skills as they go along as well. And also looking at how, once again, how we involve industry. So I'm looking at it from my side, from my school. The students don't do a standard dissertation or a standard project. They work with industry, with an industry rep on a project that they are working on. But that can involve talking to the MD of the company, to the CEO, to the various different heads of departments and everything else. So they have to learn how to communicate. They have to learn how to have those professional discussions, and to be able to present ideas in a professional way, and also to be able to take feedback if actually what they're presenting doesn't meet the brief or isn't in the right area, or that they need to develop things further and everything else, and how to work in that professional environment. And for me, then a lot of that comes into your reflective practice. And we do a lot of reflective practice with the students as well. So looking at how to develop themselves internally, how to develop themselves in relationships with others, and how that then leads them in a good place for when they graduate. And that reflective process should happen throughout your whole career. It doesn't matter what stage you're at, but that internal reflection is a really important thing to do from my side. And it's how then you start to develop the other skills that perhaps you're not so strong in, whether that happens to be being able to listen to feedback and how to action it, whether it's looking at how to be able to form those conversations with people that are at a higher level in the hierarchy. And all of that starts with the education process, but also that needs to continue throughout their professional career as well.
And of course, you're only with the students for a small percentage of their life, only a couple of years, whereas they're at high school, comprehensive school for 5 years, and they're at work for many more years, hopefully. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I think you're totally right in what you're saying, and I know you guys do a great job of preparing the graduates in terms of soft skills to enter the workplace. Nikos, part of the responsibility must lie with the learner themselves. And I know I'm talking to you because you are someone that's always been a lifelong learner. You've always put your development right at the front of the queue in terms of your priorities in life. Tell us a little bit about that in terms of how you feel about it.
Yeah, I think personal development can only be personal at the end of the day. And what I mean is, we are the only ones who know what we or who we want to become as we grow older, whether that's professionally or personally. So that journey has to be kind of a personal journey. That doesn't mean that during that journey there's not going to be people, mentors or tutors or universities, institutions that are not going to be there to guide you and support you. But again, at the end of the day, these are all choices that are personal. The university that you're going to choose to attend or the advice that you're going to listen to is something that is a personal choice. So the responsibility can only be yours. But it's important to also be able to lean on the advice of other people on the path.
100%. And something Lisa mentioned earlier was, in terms of soft skills, was placement year, which I think is something we picked up on prior to RMAPI and elaborated on quite a lot. And I was quite surprised actually to find that so few students, I don't have the stats in front of me, but choose to complete a placement year. And a placement year, when you think about it, is so vital, isn't it, for that development of soft skills. I'm intrigued to know your thoughts, Lisa, on why so few students choose to complete that placement year.
I think for now, if we look at where we are with generations and where we are with them wanting to be successful and that progression up the career ladder, they see the placement year as just another year at university, rather than actually looking at the development that could be to actually enhance their careers upon graduation. It's adding, in their minds, it's adding another year to their studies. It's not adding another year to when they'll actually be able to graduate. It's also adding another level of cost as well, because placement years, unfortunately, are not free. They have fees associated to them that they have to pay. And we've seen now within universities that students want to achieve things quicker. They want to get out into the world of work quicker. They want to be promoted to management roles far quicker than what they have been beforehand. So I think that whole love of what a placement year used to be and the actual elements that you would learn from that and how that would actually help you progress with your career have been lost somewhere along the way. And it's just seen as that extra year of study that actually is going to be of no benefit to me, rather than it being actually it's got a huge amount of benefits and it will then help to be able to progress careers and everything else. There's also the other side of it, though, that the number of businesses that are offering placement years has decreased. So therefore, you've got some real key players within the industry that have fantastic placement years, but they're very few and far between. So the competition for them has got a lot harder because there's less of them. And I think there's a number of different reasons for this, in the fact that it's extra work, shall we say, for people that are already could be considered as being time poor. They've got to this back to the idea of having to mentor people and to be able to buddy and everything else. So I think we need to have this two-pronged attack, shall we say, to be able to get placement years back in. I really think placement years are an absolutely positive experience for both sides, whether it's industry or the students. But we need to get that message out there of why they're a benefit to both sets of people.
Should they be mandatory?
I think they should be mandatory. In my programs, they're mandatory, which I've gone completely against the trend, shall we say. So if you come to me, placements are mandatory. They are part of your program. Yeah. There isn't a yes or a no. It's a you must.
Talk to me about the quality of placement years that your students have experienced.
They vary, unfortunately. In the past, I have had to take students out of their placement year and find them an alternative provider, alternative industry, a business to be able to go in, because they're not actually learning anything. There's no development, whether it's technical or soft skills. They can make a great cup of tea by the end of it for the GM, but that's about as far as it goes. So I think we've got to look at they are a member of staff for whatever team they happen to be in during that placement time, and they should be treated in that positive way, to be able to enhance their skills knowledge, but also to be of benefit to the business that they're working in. But unfortunately, there are very mixed experiences out there. Some have an absolutely fantastic time and they're offered jobs at the end of it and can go back to that particular business if they wanted to after graduation, which is really positive and what we want to see from placement years. But there are also the other side of the coin, that they are just treated really, really poorly. And also the other side of it is that for myself, I will not work with any businesses that will not pay my students. They are there as a minimum of 40 hours per week during their placement time. To me, they are a member of the team and they should be paid. So they should be paid the same as what other members of the team are. But also on the other side of it, there are some businesses that will not pay for placement students either, and it's just seen as free labour, and so therefore helps their bottom line.
What are your thoughts, Luca? Bearing in mind what Lisa said, how can the industry improve in this crucial area of providing a quality placement year?
We had very good experience with placement students. A lot of them got then back to cross country and they got even into management positions. So it's been very beneficial for them. I agree with Lisa, they should be paid. I'm not sure they should be paid as much as other team members, but I do believe they should be paid because if you don't have the experience, you don't have the graduation, I'm not talking about they should be paid absolutely peanuts, but as an example, let's throw some numbers there. If an analyst is on £30,000, I think a placement student probably should be on 24,000, something like that. So still above minimum salary, but it should still be lower than what an analyst with a few years of experience has. I guess we stopped to do them with this year, and that was mainly because due to budget. I think the placement students are great, but they're a big consumption of time. And for us, we were in a situation where we could have got 2 full-time analysts, which they will stay for good, or 2 placement students. So we opted for the analyst, unfortunately, due to budget constraints. My last 2 placement students, they finished, I think, was September last year, and they got back to us as analysts as soon as we opened the position. I think it was March this year. So as soon as or July this year, I can't remember now. It's all blurred. But basically, they went back to their last year of university. They graduated, and then we actually hired them, and now they're paid the same amount they're paid any other analyst, because I do believe that every analyst, if someone does the same job, they should be all on the same pay. So that is a successful story. But like I said, for an organization point of view, yes, it's quite onerous. It could be very difficult, and that's why, from my point of view, I probably would rather have a graduate and have a graduate scheme, which is a 2 years and all, and then these people actually can stick around. So I guess my issue is actually investing in people that then after 12 months, when they're good and formed, they actually have to move on.
Would it make sense to standardise this approach, do you think, a little bit more? I know obviously it's pan-industry, it's cross-industry, it's difficult to do, but would some kind of standardisation of this kind of help, do you think?
Yes, I think all this placement that should be made mandatory, or even a graduate program should be made mandatory. And I think even legally, let's say an organization that has, I don't know, let's say 50 million plus revenue, 100 million plus revenue, should mandatory have, I don't know, 1%, 2% of the workforce that has to be graduates. Because I think one of the biggest, most difficult things was the same for me when I graduated. When was that? Oh God, 12, 13 years ago, 14 years ago. The first job is so difficult to land. It's so stressful. You know so little about actually what happens. There is a big mismatch of information of what your expectations are and what actually happens in a job. And if we could make the transition from school or university to workforce smoother, I think I'm all for it. I think the government should really think about if we could do something in that area. I think would be hugely beneficial, even for the GDP of the United Kingdom. Is something that would really benefit the whole community, really.
Yeah, more to be done, I think. What are your thoughts, Nikos?
Well, it's a very complex kind of subject, I think. I didn't do a placement. I did my master's, so I went straight into a graduate scheme, which is and isn't a placement. It really helped. As Luca said, initially it's really hard because there's not many businesses that can give you an opportunity. So a graduate scheme or a placement year is an easy step to get into the workforce. Making it mandatory, I'm not really sure if that would be possible, first of all, and I don't know how students would take it themselves. I guess it's a complex topic. But just to echo on what Luca said, I also went through kind of a hard beginning in my career. It was difficult, but COVID was also thrown into the mix. So I totally understand what Luca means when he says that it can be a very stressful moment for students. So I would say if there can be any help in any form for students in the beginning of their career, there should be.
I think it's certainly, and times have changed, haven't they? And students, and I think everyone to a certain extent wants things now. And it's like if you look at, years ago, I'm sure my age, but years ago, if you wanted something, you saved up for it. Nowadays, it's just like, just put it on credit card or pay it off. And it's that wanting instant. And Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, X or whatever is just full of it, isn't it? It's full of, here's a hack to do this. And sometimes there's no hack. You just have to, get out there and actually do it and experience and allow that passage of time to pass rather than like, right, skip the placement year. We just want to get into work now and then actually find it difficult to get into work because you've not done the placement year. That's my thoughts on it anyway.
Sorry to cut you off, Jason, but I would also add the cost of living. I don't know if we can compare, 20 years ago, I think life was a little bit different. Things are very expensive nowadays. And when you've spent an X amount to do your studies, which costs a lot, you want to see an ROI on your investment, let's say. So people just want to get into the field and start making money, I guess.
Yeah, too true, too true. Okay, moving on, driving graduates even into revenue management. I don't think anyone sits at comprehensive school or high school and says, I want to be a revenue manager. Maybe some kids play with toy hotels and things like that when they're 5 or 6, but it's something that hospitality, forgive me for saying, is often something that people kind of fall into. And, Lisa will talk very much about how students fall out of hospitality actually during the degree, which is a debate for another day, I think. But Nikos, why did you choose revenue management as a career? Or did it choose you?
Yeah, well, I agree with what you said. It's not something that is on the radar, unfortunately. I didn't know it existed. So very quickly, I did my bachelor's in economics. So I really enjoyed working with numbers back in Greece. And then I knew that I was going to spend some time abroad, and I wanted to pick an industry that could bring me back eventually. And as you know, Greece, tourism, they're linked. So I did my master's in hotel management, and then I was taught revenue management in my master's, which to me seemed like the perfect kind of balance between numbers and the industry. So that's how I picked it. But I think it's very important now, having done it, to differentiate revenue management, not differentiate, but maybe call it differently, call it commercial management rather than revenue management, or establish how it's placed in the commercial function rather than separating it from the rest. Because having done it now for 3 or 4 years, and actually I'm not now in business analytics, I'm not in revenue management, you realize how well it's positioned in the business, in a hotel, if we're talking about a hotel, and how many different levers you get to pull and how many people you get to interact with. So I think that would have been very, very beneficial to me 5 years ago, to know that revenue management is this and it's placed there, and it allows you to work with people from sales and marketing and business analytics and e-commerce, and you're basically driving the commercial performance of a hotel. That would have made things much more clear to me back then. But you're right, I didn't pick it. It chose me. It chose me.
Lisa, what can we do about this? Is it industry that should be getting into classrooms, boots on the ground, and shouting about revenue management so that it doesn't have to pick Nikos, Nikos picks it?
I think it's a bit of both, if that makes sense. I think I cannot think of one student when I've interviewed them or when I've had discussions with them when they've come for open days and things like that, that when you ask them what their dream is and why they're going to be studying hospitality or tourism or events or all of those sort of surrounding areas, I cannot think of one student in all the years that I've sort of been in academia now that has ever said to me, "Oh, I want to do revenue management. It's the dream." And it's just something that just doesn't exist. Which I think we have some education to do from that side of things when they're thinking about career paths, they're thinking about where they want to go to, how they want to develop and everything else. Because I think it's also important that we have it within our curriculums, within our degrees as well. to be able to bring it to the forefront of people's minds. But what I will say is whenever you sort of introduce that module to them or the modules that are associated with it, you get these eyeballs looking at you as if you're thinking, say, you're now going to teach me maths. And I hated maths at school, so I'm not going to like this. So we have to do a lot of re-education to start off with to get people to realize it's not about maths. Yes, it's numbers, but it's not like your maths was at school and everything else and all that stuff that you were frightened of and worried about. And it is that commercial aspect and it is that essence of the fact that without revenue management, and of course, years ago it used to be called yield management, and we've moved on now to revenue management. So hopefully we will be able to see more the commercialized side of it and how that drives a business forward will come to the forefront within the next few years or so. Then it's also on the other side of it. I run a mentoring program for all of our students at the school. So every student is allocated a mentor. This is based on what their career aspects are going to be, what they want to do. But to be able to get anybody from the revenue management side is really hard because they're the ones that don't necessarily put their hands up and things like that. And they're not the ones that come into the classroom. So I think we've got a number of things that we need to do. We need to make students realize there is an absolutely fantastic career path and career opportunities within revenue management. There's nothing to be frightened of, and it's not maths. And the fact that you've got a key part to play within the commercial feasibility and viability of the businesses that you're working at, but also the industry and all of those revenue managers out there and business analytics and analysts and everything else that are out there to actually step into the classroom, to mentor students, to be able to show them what a good opportunity they will have. So I think we've got a number of different prongs that we can attack this with.
Luca, give me your thoughts. Bearing in mind that you've worked in multiple industries that apply revenue management, how can we best drive graduates to choosing a career in RM?
It's a very difficult question. I think we just need to build awareness. It was the same for me. I didn't know what it was till I actually felt into it randomly. When you just start your career, you actually, you pick something, you actually realize what you don't like, because I started in finance and I did realize that I didn't like finance. And then, I ended up in a pricing position, and then from a pricing position to a revenue management position, which I have enjoyed to these days. I think it's awareness, and it just needs to be built. And I think still a lot of people, even that are much more senior in different industries, they still don't understand it. So they don't even fully understand also even what a commercial director is, because in a lot of organizations, if you go and you look at the job description of a commercial director, it's actually a sales director. Right, they're looking for someone actually selling and do all the CRM activities, which for me as a sales director is not a commercial director. There is no commercial director. There's no commercial without revenue management. This is how I see it. What is commercial compared to sales? Commercial is sales with the brain. This is how I see it. So you're not just just going for quantities. Not just going for quantities. You're just going for whatever actually increases the value of an organization and the EBIT. Definitely needs to build on awareness, because from my point of view, it's probably the most exciting career you could wish you're into, especially if you're a people person and you're analytical as well, and you have the blend of both.
Yeah.
Because just in finance, you end up just doing probably numbers, but you cannot really impact the future. Albeit in some organizations with a finance function, which is also strategic, but the reality where the actual strategy should sit is within commercial, the strategy, the product, the customer experience, and all, and that's what makes a company and an economy goes around. So I think how can you find something more exciting than that? Really, I can't think about anything
Beats
more
me.
Yeah,
beats me.
Yeah.
Should we be getting into?
You should have Luca in the classroom, Lisa. When people say numbers, then Luca steps in and explains why these numbers are exciting.
Luca's going to come in. He's definitely going to come in.
Yeah, just tell me where and when.
We need to photocopy him and send him out to all the universities.
Yeah.
The king of revenue management, right?
If he's the king, you're the prince. You're the prince,
right,
Nikos.
Yes, we'll go together.
Nikos, staying with you, is there an argument to say that commercial leaders should be getting into classrooms pre-16 to extol the virtues of a career in revenue management, commercial, whatever you want to call it? Is that an age where you're impressionable, where you don't really know what you want to do, and someone comes in and fires your imagination in an assembly, and suddenly that's it?
I don't see how it could harm things. This is an age where you need to make decisions. I know it's very confusing because everyone asks you what do you want to do in life. For some people, it's really difficult to understand what they want to do in life. I've always been very jealous, let's say, of people who knew, I want to be a doctor. For me, it was a different path. I thought I was going to be a vet and then an architect, and then I was an economist, and I'm a revenue manager. But I think it's probably a very pivotal moment in life, and having someone there who could explain what they do and not confuse people. I think that's very important. Someone who knows the difference between a director of sales and a director of a commercial director, as Luca mentioned, would probably help people understand what we do a bit better. Yes.
What do you reckon, Lisa?
I think most definitely. I think we've got the whole problem with anything that is hospitality, tourism, events, travel related as being not glamorous or not being promoted by a lot of schools out there. Because it's a bit of that, oh, it's a fallback career. It's something you do for a little while you're trying to work out what you're doing and everything else. So I think we have getting into schools earlier, being able to speak to the pupils while they're there, being able to speak to careers advisors and all of those, the tutors that are within the school environment is something that's very much needed. And I know there are a couple of companies out there that are doing a lot of work within this area, within the areas that they operate in, with the local schools and everything else, to be able to be able to get the message out there that there are these fantastic careers. It's not about dead end jobs. It's not about stuff that is minimum wage and you're going to be working ridiculous hours and everything else to be able to even be able to put food on the table and everything else. I think there is a lot of work that we can do from both the education side of things and the industry side of things to be able to get into people's lives far earlier, looking at the career opportunities that they could have and starting to educate both the influencers and those that are making the decisions.
Guys, thank you so much for your input on this. I think it's important, isn't it, for us all to do our little bit and to poke the bear a little bit, as you're doing with HUU that you always forget about, Lisa. And various other people that I know in the industry that are doing the same. But I think the more we can shout about it and the more we can address issues as we see them, I think the better really for the industry and the better for revenue management. Luca, I know you wanted to condense this into 30 minutes and make it hard hitting, but I told you I go on and on and on, and it's been about 45 and I've not had lunch yet. And it's 25 to 2. So let's wrap it up. You guys are busy. I'm starving, but thank you genuinely. Like, it was brilliant at RMAPI. This has been brilliant as well. You're brilliant people, and you're all three of you passionate about revenue management, and that's kind of why I wanted you on the show. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you again, Jason, for the invite.
And that's all we've got time for this week. Join us again, like and share the show, and it helps us attract brilliant panel discussions, taking the